welcome to another MWC Short. I'm Karen from the content team, and I'm joined this morning by Jens Houden from DHL Supply Chain. Welcome, Jens.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. You were due to speak within the Industry X theme at MWC, and that was within a session focusing specifically on supply chains of the future and digital supply chains, and the idea of incorporating new Industry X technologies like blockchain and robotics into logistics. So can you tell me a bit more, Jens, about how DHL Supply Chain has adapted its business? How are you incorporating new technologies?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. It's not a straightforward answer, of course, because supply chains are becoming more and more complex by adding digital solutions. So we strongly believe that what sets us apart is really the capability to deploy the new solutions in a pretty standardized way. I mean, it's easy to test new fancy solutions. The difficult thing is to roll them out in many sites and to get our people to work on those new solutions, with those new solutions. So we actually strongly believe that the big value comes from how we collaborate with our people, how we train our people, and how we allow them to work in a standardized environment, so that digital doesn't come as a thing that just happens to them, but they can make it work and make it happen themselves.
Okay, great. So DHL is obviously a very well-known logistics service provider. How is digitalization changing the landscape for other companies, for other logistics providers? What are the kind of additional complexities?
Well, we believe it's now really actually exciting times to be in logistics, not only for us, but for all our competitors and for all stakeholders in the supply chain, because we believe that with new technologies popping up, enabled by things that happen around us, 5G, new network connectivities, name them, we truly believe that it will change the industry. And in many ways, and just one example is, of course, that in our private life, we're all getting used to business to consumer e-commerce type of service levels, and meeting those in a B2B environment now is just one of the many challenges that we face, and that we have to change our ways of working to as an industry to be able to answer the needs of our customers.
Of course, and you talked about that trend of the expectation for what's happening with B2C, bringing that into B2B environments. What are some of the other trends that you're seeing?
Well, the first one, of course, as I already mentioned, is the industry expects faster, more agile, more flexible solutions, and we have to adapt our ways of working on that. And that has, of course, an impact in how we drive our business. We cannot do our business in the same way, in a very manual way as we did it a few years ago. We need to adapt our solutions. Robotics, automation, artificial intelligence are just pieces of that puzzle. And there is not one that is more or less important than the other. It's the combination of new technologies and how we deploy them that really makes a difference in how we drive the business.
Great. And just coming back to this idea of digital supply chains of the future, which was the title of the session, how is DHL Supply Chain investing in this notion of a digital supply chain of the future?
Yeah. Well, just last year, our group CEO, Frank Appel, announced Strategy 2025 for the group that is about delivering excellence in a digital world. So only in that, it already shows how much importance we put to it and how we think that digitization will change the industry. So at a group level, a 2 billion euro investment over 5 years was formally announced.
Wow.
And for us as DHL Supply Chain, it's really about an assessment that we made of all our sites globally, where we have identified more than 1,300 potential digital initiatives that we can bring to our site.
Fantastic.
And for us, it's really going to be about assessing those in more detail, working with the sites and deploying the innovations that we believe bring the most effective solutions to our sites and to our customers at a relatively short time. I mean, I already mentioned it earlier, the testing of new technologies is a fun thing to do and we all like it, but for us really the value sits in how do we deploy them and how do we standardize so that we can innovate across many of our sites rather than having a fancy pilot just left or right.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. But I think thinking of certain technologies of the future or of now, there's a lot that's been made of the use of blockchain, not just in logistics, but in lots of different areas. But can you talk about your view or the view of DHL supply chain on using blockchain and robotics in logistics?
Yeah, I think it's two different phases of maturity. Blockchain, I'm personally a strong believer we're only just at the start, and it's a bit of let's see what happens going forward. But clearly, blockchain has a lot of potential in enabling easier and faster global trade. I think that's where the value of blockchain will be in the future. For robotics, it's a bit closer to our heart in running warehouses and local transport solutions. I think there we have made a step change already. Key for us is really our people. You know, our people is where we make the difference in the market and how we compete with our competitors. The value sits in our people and how we train and collaborate with them. And we strongly believe that actually robotic solutions is a way to engage in a different way and better with our people. It allows us to make them focus on value-added tasks rather than on just repetitive tasks that don't add a lot of value. And by doing that, it is our goal that we give them an environment where actually they're happy to work and where they see value in coming to work every day. By having them focus on problem solving, on data-driven tasks rather than on shifting boxes, if I may put it that way.
Right. So the idea is definitely not replacing people with robots, but rather getting rid of the kind of tasks that are quite repetitive, simple tasks that robots could do, freeing up time for people to do slightly more interesting things.
That's correct, and bringing that message to our teams as a management team is of key importance. It is not about replacing their jobs. It's about allowing them to have jobs that add value to the supply chains rather than just being in a repetitive mode day after day.
Great. So the last thing I want to ask you before we wrap up, Jens, coming to MWC, which has traditionally been in the past very much a telecoms and operators show, and it's moved much more in recent years to become a show that incorporates lots of industries. So for example, supply chain and logistics, manufacturing, and a lot more kind of industrial players as well. Is there much value, or what do you see as the potential value to work with telecoms operators or some of the vendors in that space for you as a logistics company?
Yeah, I think there's two angles to that. And the first angle is what we've just been talking about the last couple of minutes. Many of those players provide us with solutions that allow us to drive faster, more agile and more efficient supply chains and warehouse processes. So that's a good reason to be there and to be interested in how the industry evolves. The second angle is, of course, that the telecom industry for us is a very important industry as a customer. Talking about my scope, the technology sector in mainland Europe, Middle East and Africa for DHL Supply Chain, more than 30% of our revenue in that area is generated by what we call the telco landscape. And that includes OEMs and telecom provider, of course. And we see a lot of value in working with OEMs, first of all, on developing and discovering with them how the rollout of 5G in Europe is going to be from a logistics point of view, of course, and how we can support them in the best possible way we're doing that. And for the telecom operators, it is really about what we touched on earlier, those business to consumer expectations and how we can support them by bringing real customer promise and best customer service to their customers by having fast and agile supply chains in place. On top of, and that's often forgotten, but probably one of the most focus areas we have for the moment is how do we link that to being sustainable in the long way and circular economy, and how do we go about swap, return and refurbishment of devices is a key focus sector for us now, and we believe it's going to drive our success in the next coming years.
Oh, it's fascinating. Thank you. And I think sustainability would have been definitely a key message this year's show. But I hope, Jens, to see you next year in Barcelona 2021.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for taking part in this MWC Short. Jens, thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.